Hello everybody, how are you? My name is Andy and this is UFOs and Other Paranormal Stuff. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of UFOs and Other Paranormal Stuff. I'm your host Andy and today we'll be delving into a fascinating historical mystery that has baffled scholars and intrigued storytellers for centuries. We'll be exploring the strange case of the Green Children of Woolpit, two young siblings who appeared in a small English village during the 12th century with the skin colour of grass and speaking an unknown language. What could explain their origins, and how did they adapt to the new life in a world that was so different from their own? Before we get into the story, I want to take a moment to thank all the listeners who wrote in with their amazing stories for the previous two episodes in the Your Stories 2023 series. Your creativity and openness truly make this podcast community feel special, and we couldn't do it without you. Also, just a quick reminder to our listeners to visit the website www.ufosandops.com, where you can find all our episodes to date in audio or video format and get in contact with us there. You can visit our shop and support the podcast with a donation if you like. We truly appreciate your support and hope you enjoy today's episode. Just before we do get started with the main episode, I do have an email to read out for you. This one is an email I received only this morning from Jo in Romford in East London, telling me of her story of a ghostly apparition that she saw one evening in Collier Row, near to Romford. Dear Andy, I'm writing to tell you of an experience that happened to me in Collier Row, near Romford. One night I was walking along the quiet streets of Collier Row. As I approached the corner of Havering Road and Gobians Avenue, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Standing there on the corner was a ghostly figure, shrouded in a white mist. I couldn't make out any features, but I could feel its eyes on me, watching me. I was scared stiff, unable to move or speak. As the figure moved closer to me, I saw it was a young girl, no older than 10-12 years old. She was dressed in a long white dress and her hair was all messed up. She looked like she was from another time. The girl walked right through me. I could see right through her as if she wasn't really there, but the feeling of her presence was all too real. I later found out that the corner of Havering Road and Gobians Avenue was a site of a terrible accident many years ago. A girl had been hit by a car and killed, and her ghost has been seen by many locals in the area since. I don't know why the girl appeared to me that night, but I will never forget that horrible feeling. It was as if she was trying to tell me something, or perhaps just seeking comfort from the living. All I know is that the memory still sends shivers down my spine. Yours sincerely, Jo. Well, thank you very much for that, Jo, and what do you, my listeners, think about that story? Very interesting indeed, I think. Maybe we should do an episode on haunted roads and feature that story there as well. Romford, quite a nice place in sort of northeast London, used to be part of Essex. I've been up there many times myself, quite a few years ago now, but I've always found the place to be quite interesting, especially out in the areas like Collier Row. Anyway, thank you again for that, Jo. Don't forget, if you want to get in contact with us, go to the website www.ufosandops.com and you can contact me and the show from the contact form right at the bottom of the page there. As I begin this recording today, I'm looking out of my window to the morning of a very nice and sunny day, and I really hope it's going to be warm too. The birds are singing and the trees are starting to go green again. Most of my view is of green trees, green bushes and green grass, and as I record these words, I wonder how I would feel if, when looking out to such a view full of wonderful greenery, if I spotted green children. I would imagine I would feel very worried. Knowing me, I'll probably go out to see if they needed any medical attention. I wonder if that is what the people in Woolpit in Suffolk felt when ploughing the fields. They actually did come across 2 children with the skin colour of the greenest grass. Woolpit is a small village located in the county of Suffolk in the east of England. It has a long history dating back to the Anglo-Saxon period and has been inhabited for well over 1,000 years. Today it is a picturesque rural community surrounded by farmland and countryside. The village has a few amenities including a church and a primary school, a village hall and a pub and a post office. Typical English village really. One of the most notable features of Woolpit is its historic village green, which has been used for various community events over the years. The village is also known for its connection to the legend of the Green Children of Woolpit, which became a popular local tourist attraction. In fact, as you are heading in and out of the village of Woolpit, you will see the village sign, which is black metal, I believe, but it has 2 green figures, and they are the Green Children of Woolpit. Now, of course, you and me already know that Suffolk is a place full to the brim of strange sightings and happenings. UFOs have been spotted over the county many times, none more famously so than in 1980 over the Rendlesham Forest. Of course, witchcraft and some famous witch trials also took place in that county too. Woolpit itself, despite the fact that it is a small village, is no stranger to quite a few tales of the paranormal. There are reports of a haunted house that is said to have stood on the site of the old Woolpit Village Hall. It was apparently inhabited by a malevolent ghost known as the Woolpit Witch, who was said to have been responsible for some mysterious deaths and disappearances over the years. Then there's the Green Pool. According to legend, the pool is bottomless and is said to be haunted by the ghost of the Green Lady. The story goes that she lures unsuspecting travellers to their doom. Of course, there is no more famous case of oddity to come from that small Suffolk village than the case of the 2 green children that were discovered by farmers way back during the reign of King Stephen, who ruled England from 1135 to 1154. The story sounds like a fairy tale, but the difference is that it is actually true. They were documented by both Ralph of Coggeshall in his Chronicum Anglicanum, which was written in 1220, and William of Newborough's Historia Rerum Anglicarum, written in 1189. I hope I said those 2 titles correctly. The Green Children are mentioned in passing in Britannia, written by William Camden in 1586, as well as in 2 works from the 17th century, but it seems that Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newborough's writings are the closest to contemporary that we are going to get, especially as their writings come fresh from the mouths of the people who personally knew the Green Children. Farmers working in their fields were amazed when they suddenly discovered 2 children chatting away to themselves on the edge of one of the fields. They appear to be around 5 or 6 years of age and definitely have some resemblance to each other, making the farmers think that these 2 were brother and sister. As the farmers went over to check on the children, they began to realise something is not quite right here. The children are dressed in clothes of a type that these farmers had not seen before. They cannot seem to identify the fabric of the clothes that the kids were wearing. The colours on the clothes were so unusual that the farmers were unable to identify them. As the farmers got closer to the children, they realised something else. The children's skin is green. Some farmers thought that the colours of the surrounding trees might be making a light impression on the children's skin, but as they got closer still, they could see that the skin colour was in fact green, like the Wicked Witch of the West from the Wizard of Oz film. Something definitely is not right, but the farmers still feel that these kids might need some sort of help. The farmers could hear the children talking to each other, but the language they were using was one that the farmers were not familiar with. Woolpit as mentioned, is in Suffolk, and way back in those old days, the area that forms that county today was a major hub for foreign trade and travel. The seaports of Dunwich, Orford, Lowestoft and Aldeburgh, where they sell really nice fish and chips by the way, would have been hives of activity, with boats coming in from mainland Europe, Scandinavia, to offload their cargo and offload some passengers too. Hearing people speaking in different languages would have been a familiar thing for the people in that county in those days, even in the small village of Woolpit, through which travellers would pass looking to get some food or lodgings whilst on their way to other destinations. Added to that, the English language in the 12th century would have been more like the Scandinavian and the German languages of the time as well, given that they were all derived from dialects of the Western Germanic language, and had not yet evolved away from each other to the extent that they have today. But when the farmers try to talk to the children appear absolutely terrified. It is not known how the villagers gained the children's trust, but they eventually were able to get the kids to follow them back to Woolpit and to the home of Sir Richard de Colne. Sir Richard was the local knight, and was effectively the medieval version of a police officer nowadays, meant to be well-educated, well-travelled, so the villagers thought that he would be able to help the children and solve the mysteries surrounding them. Even he is shocked and surprised by the appearance and the sound of these two green children. He assumes that after all of their travels and troubles of the day, the children must be absolutely starving hungry, and offers them some fresh bread. But, to his surprise, it seems that the boy and the girl don't even know what this stuff is. They don't even know that bread is food. They even start crying. Sir Richard decides that he will let these children, who are clearly lost, stay with him in his manor house. Try as he might, though, he cannot get them to eat anything. The children are getting weaker and weaker as time passes. Villagers come to look at these strange green children from somewhere unknown, giving them treats to try to get them to eat, but nothing works. They will not eat anything. They look at the food as if it was you or I at a young age being given a plastic cup and being encouraged to eat it. Nothing works, and Sir Richard is getting worried for the children's health. That was until one day the children spotted something familiar. Raw, broad beans. These broad beans were brought in by one of the members of staff at the manor house after that day's harvest. When the children spotted the broad beans, they went absolutely crazy, ran over to the beans and began to eat them. But weirdly, they started to eat into the stems of the beans first, instead of into the actual pods where the good bits are. It was as if they recognised the food, but they did not know how to actually eat it properly, until shown how to do so by that very same member of staff. K.M. Briggs observed in her 1967 book, The Fairies in English Tradition and Literature, that it is to be noticed too that the habitual food of the children was the bean, the food of the dead. Broad beans have been a symbol of death and corruption since ancient times, which makes you wonder why anyone would eat them, really, to be honest. Apparently Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newborough both said that they heard this story about the kids and the broad beans from so many respectable people that they felt they had no choice but to believe it. Sir Richard is just relieved that they are now starting to eat. After a few weeks he starts to become fond of the children. He doesn't even start to investigate where they might have come from, and a few months later the girl starts to try other foods. Soon after that she begins to lose her green skin colour. But the boy is stubborn, and he refuses to even try to eat anything other than the broad beans, and depression starts to set in. He ignores food that will help him, carrying on with these beans. He grows weaker and weaker until, sadly, just less than a year since they were discovered in the field, he dies. The little girl keeps on living in the house with Sir Richard, and soon after the death of her sibling, she begins to work there, probably to earn her keep. The girl is now starting to learn English, just enough so that she can start communicating with Sir Richard and the other villagers. Naturally, one question on the lips of all the villagers was, "Where did you and your brother come from?" Her answer blew them away. The girl says that both her and her brother were transported to Woolpit from a place that no one has ever heard of before. She said that they came from a place where the sun never shone, and the light was just like twilight. She called the place St. Martin's Land. Everything there was green. All the people were green, the flora was green, the fauna was green, and St. Martin's Land was guarded by a river, a big river. According to the girl, the people in this strange green place could see a luminous country on the other side of this river, but no one had ever gone there. Apparently it was deemed impossible to get there. But that was all to change one afternoon. While out one day herding the cattle for their father, the children heard a noise. It sounded like bells, but it was coming from somewhere far, far away in the distance. The children were completely overwhelmed by something. It was as if the noise had cast a spell on the two kids. They left the herd and they wandered into the woods, a place where they had been told never to go. They found a cave. They walked into the cave, deeper and deeper, for what seemed like days and days, until eventually they came out the other side. They were, of course, very happy to be out of the cave, as they were exhausted and hungry. Upon them exiting the cave, they were blinded by the light from this strange new sun, a sun with colour and light, and lots of that light. They were confused with all the different colours that now surrounded them. They had never seen anything like this before. They knew that they were obviously very, very lost, and so decided just to lay down and bask in the warm sun. And that is when the farmers found them. Now I know what you're thinking. Yeah, right, whatever, etc. But the people of Woolpit took the girl's word for it and believed every single thing that she was saying. St. Martin's Land, where everyone and everything was green, and there was not too much sun, and there was a big uncrossable river. Yes, they believed it all. William Camden, some 400 years later, also took the girl's story as truth. He thought that the children were wild beings, even going so far as to call them fairies, that had come into this realm from somewhere completely different. You have to remember that over the centuries many cultures have seen fairies quite differently to how modern popular culture portrays them nowadays. Of course, modern literature has made us all think that fairies all look like Tinkerbell, and of course photographs of the mysterious Cottingley fairies enhanced that fairy appearance in our minds. The Cottingley photographs deserve an episode of this podcast all of their own, I think. Some cultures see them as grotesque spirits of the dead, demonic almost. Some think of fairy folk as troll-like creatures who inflict harm on people. But in Old English culture they were seen as mischievous creatures with, wait for it, green skin. And the belief in fairies was actually common in England at the turn of the 12th century. However, actually calling them fairies was not so common. One superstition was that if you said the word fairy out loud, you would invoke their wrath, and so people just did not want to try that out. That could explain why no one mentioned the word until William Camden 4 centuries later. A considerable amount of lore around fairies revolves around changelings, fairies left in place of stolen humans. Some folklore describes how to prevent the fairies from stealing babies and substituting changelings, as well as abducting the elderly. There is in fact plenty of support for Mr. Camden's theory, as throughout the British Isles at this time fairies are also considered as spirits of the dead who are stuck in purgatory. They are neither good enough to be heavenly angels nor hellish demons. That kind of makes sense too when you think of the girl's description of St. Martin's Land as dim. It has also been said that the fairy world is guarded by an impenetrable body of water, like the river in St. Martin's Land, that no one can cross. Also, the girl said that she and her brother had travelled to the Woolpit through a cave. Caves, for a very long time, were thought of as portals in which people who go into them can travel across time and space into another reality or universe. Celtic folklore believes that caves are a highway for fairy folk. It is also said that fairies are very good at the art of seduction. There were reports that the girl became, in quotes, wanton and impudent when she got older. This was passed from Sir Richard to Ralph of Coggeshall, as she acted that way towards him as well as some of the villagers. Now, a lot of people may be thinking that this is just all nicely spun tale, but you have to admit there is a shed load of folklore being acted out by these children. Could the children, who were so young, really act out fairyland folklore so well that it actually convinced everyone in the town and the surrounding areas, including the well-educated knight Sir Richard? Remember when the Green Children first came to Woolpit and Sir Richard's house, they were very reluctant to eat any of the normal food. Legend says that if a fairy wanders into the human world and eats human food, they are tied forever to that world. Did the girl stop being a fairy when she ate the food that other people were eating? She lost her green skin colour, remember, and she never went back to where she supposedly came from. Now, remember I also mentioned earlier that the beans were the food of the dead, according to Celtic beliefs. The people around at that time believed that zombies, ghosts and fairies all ate beans. Maybe with regards to the zombies, though, they got that mixed up with brains. But again, this is all the more reason for the population of the small village to believe that the children really did come from another realm. It is definitely a strange story that could be true, and according to all accounts it was true. But it did happen hundreds of years ago, and so the story could have changed completely. But this is not the only case of people having strange coloured skin, and in having that strange coloured skin they would invoke some sort of strange superstition around them from the locals. In the 19th century, in a town called Troublesome Creek in West Virginia in the United States, lived a family called the Fugates. Martin Fugate had blue skin. He and his wife had 4 children. All of them had blue skin too. As the family line continued within the limited local gene pool, anyone passing by could see who was related to who because they all had blue skin. Then, more recently, there was a man called Paul Carrison, who was nicknamed Papa Smurf because of his bluish-purple skin. This was strange, as he did not always have this skin colour. He was fair-skinned until around 1993, when his skin colour started to change and go blue. This was permanent, and nothing could be done to change it. Sadly, when his skin colour started to change, the community in which he lived in Oregon began to shun him. He became a recluse. And that makes me wonder just how many people are out there who do have different skin, maybe green, blue or even grey coloured skin, and won't talk about it to anyone because of the fear of what might come from the local and the wider community. The mystery of the Green Children of Woolpit may never be solved, as it was too long ago and any evidence is surely long gone by now. William of Newborough says that the girl was eventually married to a man from King's Lynn, which is about 40 miles from Woolpit, and she was living there shortly before he wrote his book. Based on his research into Richard de Calne's family history, the astronomer and writer Duncan Lunan has concluded that the girl was given the name Agnes and that she was married to a royal official named Richard Barr. And apparently they had one child together. Now, I said earlier that all of the evidence has obviously been lost, but surely, possibly, could there be some DNA evidence they had one child together, Agnes and Barr? Maybe there are some descendants of one of the Green Children still living in this world today. Who knows? Anyway, with all that, ladies and gentlemen, I am off to plan a nice little trip away to Suffolk. It is a nice place after all, been there many times. And who knows, I might even venture down into one of the cave systems near Woolpit, just to see what I can see, you know what I mean? Thank you for tuning in to this episode of UFOs and Other Paranormal Stuff. We hope you have enjoyed the story of the mysterious Green Children of Woolpit. As I wrap up, we encourage you to visit our website www.ufosandops.com to access additional episodes and get in contact with the show like Joe did, and so many of you have done over the years. I would also like to remind you to rate and review the episode, as it helps us with feedback, and your feedback helps us improve and reach a wider audience, so we really do appreciate your support. Finally, if you have any comments, questions or suggestions for future episodes, we would really love to hear from you. You can connect with us on social media or email us directly through the contact form on the bottom of the website. Thank you again for listening, and we look forward to bringing you more captivating stories in the very near future. Take care, and until I speak to you next time, see you later. Bye.